I get really used to that tune, the opening tune for Speaking of Zane. I don't know who to attribute it to, but it's a free file that's part of StreamYard. So there you go. Well, welcome everybody to the Memorial Day edition. Let me get my hat straight. Maybe it's my head that's crooked. Memorial Day edition of Speaking of Zane, May the 29th. Glad you guys could join us on a Monday evening after a long weekend. It is our 232nd edition of Speaking of Zane. I guess that means we've done 6 Memorial Days, I guess, since Zane passed, or 6 Memorial Days, or 5, I guess, since we started doing Speaking of Zane. We started Speaking of Zane on August the 5th of 2018. So I guess the first Memorial Day would have been the 2019. So that would really only make it the 4th, I guess. But anyway, good to have everybody in here. A.A. Ron is in there from Detroit. A.A. Ron, the founder of Running to Honor. Aunt Mary's in there. Hey, Aunt Mary. Lori is in there. She's downstairs. She's had our little baby granddaughter Carson all day, so I know she is tuckered out. Daryl's in there from Florissant, Missouri, a thriving suburb of St. Louis. Let's see. Steve Shirley's in there from the butterfly city of Papillon. There, a suburb of Omaha. Ken's in there. Ken's down in Central Florida. Good to have you in there. By the way, happiest of birthdays to Ken. Ken had a birthday this week. So I don't think Ken has hit the big threshold that I hit back in March, but he's not too far off from that. And also, I understand that happy 34th Air Force anniversary is in order for Ken, I think. I think that's right, Ken. When you graduated from college there in Florida, you became a young Air Force second lieutenant. And I know you had a very satisfying career. So hats off to you, Ken. Jimbo Miller's in there, another retired Air Force puke. Good to have you in there. My dad's in there. Hey, Dad. Mac Marine, retired Marine. Good to have you in there. And I know we have some others that are either watching or will watch the replay on YouTube or on the Speaking of Zane Facebook channel. Okay, well, let's see. Memorial Day. Wow, what do you say about that? We've had a week full of activities related to Memorial Day and a long weekend. I've enjoyed a very busy weekend of catching up on a lot of things around the house and washing uh, power washing the deck and washing the truck and doing a little yard work and just really detached from work. Um, and had an opportunity to get a 3 mile walk in yesterday, 5 mile walk in today. Weight loss is hanging tough at 78. I can't break the 78-pound barrier, but I'm bound and determined. I'm going to be cranking it up here over the next couple of weeks because this little challenge that I'm a part of with some colleagues at work is, I think we got about 3 weeks left, maybe 2.5 weeks left. So I'm bound and determined. Let's see, what did I say? 78. I'm bound and determined to drop 3 more pounds. I need to drop 3 more pounds. So I'm going to be doing some sit-ups and not really. I'm not going to do any sit-ups, but I'm going to walk my butt off. And eat lots of red meat. Okay, let's see. Lots of things going on today. Memorial Day wise. So in the chat, put who you are honoring today on Memorial Day. What are some of the names of those that you served with, or maybe you didn't serve with, or maybe they're relatives? Who are some of the names that we're honoring today? I would love to hear from you all. Some of you all, we share some names that we honor on this day. But Lori says, I can do sit-ups now. I can do some sit-ups. My girth is diminished significantly. I know I can do some sit-ups now. But anywho, let's see. So put them in the chat, whoever you're remembering, honoring on Memorial Day, and we'll read those. Everybody can share those, and we'll read those along the way. Okay, well, I thought I would do something kind of unique. I had the opportunity to do this at work this week. You guys knew that I was going to be hosting a webinar, and I did. Very successful. But I started out the webinar by talking about the meaning, the history, the origins of Memorial Day, and I want to read. You some of that here real quick while I'm thinking about it. If I can find it, there we go. So this is from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, and this is the origins of Memorial Day. So 3 years after the Civil War ended, on May the 5th of 1868. Hang on, let me make this bigger for my eyes. You know, my eyes turned 60 years old a couple months ago, so I'm having to do. Okay, here we go. So 3 years after the Civil War ended, on May the 5th of 1868, the head of an organization of Union veterans called the Grand Army of the Republic, you may have heard of them, established what was known as Decoration Day as a time for the nation to decorate the graves of the war dead with flowers. Major General John A. Logan declared it should be on May the 30th. It's believed that the day was chosen because flowers would be in bloom all across the country. The first large and major observance of Decoration Day was held that year at Arlington National Cemetery, just across the Potomac from Washington, D.C. The ceremony centered around the mourning draped veranda of the Arlington Mansion, which was once the home of General Robert E. Lee. Various Washington officials, including General and Mrs. Ulysses S. Grant, presided over the ceremonies. After all the speeches, children from the Soldiers and Sailors Orphan Home and members of the Grand Army of the Republic made their way through the cemetery, strewing flowers on both Union and Confederate graves, reciting prayers and singing hymns. Now, there were a lot of local observances all across the country that claimed to be the first, a whole bunch of them. Now, fast forward to 1966, Congress and President Lyndon Johnson declared that Waterloo, New York, was the birthplace of Memorial Day because there a ceremony on May the 5th, 1866, honored local veterans that had fought in the Civil War. Businesses closed, residents flew their flags at half-staff. Supporters of Waterloo's claim said that earlier observances in the other places were either informal, not community-wide, or were just one-time events. Now, by the end of the 19th century, Memorial Day ceremonies were being held on May the 30th all throughout the nation. State legislatures passed proclamations designating the day, and the Army and the Navy actually adopted regulations for proper observance at their facilities. It was not until after World War I, however, that the day was expanded to honor those who died in all American wars. And then in 1971, Memorial Day was declared as a national holiday. Many of us were kids by an act of Congress, though it's still often called Decoration Day by some. It was then also placed on the last Monday in May, as were a lot of the federal holidays, to make it a long weekend. Now, to ensure the sacrifices of Americans' fallen heroes are never forgotten, in December of 2000, the U.S. Congress passed and the president signed into law the National Moment of Remembrance Act. It created the White House Commission on the National Moments of Remembrance. The commission's charter is to encourage the people of the United States to give something back to their country, which provides so much freedom and opportunity, by encouraging and coordinating commemorations in the United States on Memorial Day and the National Moment of Remembrance. The National Moment of Remembrance encourages all Americans to pause wherever they are at 3 p.m. local on Memorial Day for a minute of silence to remember and honor those who have died in service to the nation. And there you have it, the origins of Memorial Day. Okay, well, let's take a look at the chat here. Aaron says, nice shirt. Yep, this is my walking shirt. So this and all the other shirts that I've got from Running to Honor, these are the ones because the wicking material. And I did my 5-miler today, and I hadn't taken this shirt off yet, so I'm kind of smelly in here, but I thought it was appropriate to wear today. All right, Lori is thinking of Corey Kowal, son of our friend Kelly. Let's see. Ken is thinking of his colleague and college classmate, Carlos Arriaga and Chris Music. James is thinking of his father-in-law, and other relatives at St. John's and Omaha National. And Mary's thinking of David McCraney that graduated with her in 1967. James is also thinking of crewmates that we share. All right, Facebook user there that says they love me. All right. I can't tell who that is, but I love you too. Daryl says, none of my family and friends paid the ultimate price, but I still honor them. I did pay my respects to World War II veteran Lieutenant Melvin Meyer, who was recently identified and buried at JB this past Friday. Yeah, what a fantastic story of how this country doesn't give up in finding our missing. And there was another one interred at Jefferson Barracks this past week. Daryl, was he a B-17 or a B-24 crew member, I believe? But Daryl got a chance to pay his respects. All right, Carl Kihas is in there from Warsaw, Missouri. Lori's grandmother called it Decoration Day, which is what she grew up calling it, so it only makes sense. Okay, well, if you're listening and you have someone that you're honoring on Memorial Day, put it in the chat and we'll read those along the way. Okay, well, let's see. So I know we had a lot of activities going on. You guys had activities. I read Amy attended the Omaha National Cemetery Carry the Load stop. So Amy, thanks for posting about that. Amy said she was a little disappointed in the turnout, as was I, honestly. I think we need to do a better job of promoting that, I guess, around the country. But Amy got a chance to meet with them in Omaha last week. And then let's see, at work, I mentioned a lot of the culmination of a lot of planning and activities at work. I'm very involved in our veterans organization. I had a crew of veterans at our headquarters that set up a Memorial Day tribute um, that consisted of about, let's see, they had about, see, I ordered 400 flags, which I've found out is not nearly enough. We're going to up it next year, but they took 300 flags and placed them at our headquarters. They also placed the silhouette of a battlefield cross, which is made up of a soldier's boots, rifle, and helmet on top, and also a missing man table inside our building, and a lot of people commented on it. And then I had another crew of veterans out at another facility about 30 miles away, and they did the same thing. They had 100 flags they placed around that flagpole where we replaced the flag last month, and they placed the same stuff there: the battlefield cross, a sign, and then they set up a missing man table in the cafeteria. So it's the first time we've ever done this, and it was a big hit. And they'll be taking all those things up tomorrow, and then storing them, and we will use those again next year if I have my way. We've set a precedent now. So, but that was just so much fun coordinating that, and having groups of veterans that or that jumped at the chance to do that, and it was fantastic. And then really our week kind of culminated with a roundtable discussion, a webinar that this guy hosted, and it was absolutely fantastic. I'm waiting on the recording. We did record it. I know that Daryl attended actually live, but we recorded it, and I'm waiting to get the recording, and I'm going to try to figure out how to let you guys see it. I don't know if I'll be able to package it up for YouTube or something, but it was just a fascinating roundtable. We heard from 4 people who lost a loved one in service to the country. One was my friend Dennis Yeager. He's in Omaha, and his uncle was killed on D-Day. And then we had a colleague that I work with who is a Army Reserve major and did a combat tour in Afghanistan. He lost his sergeant major in Afghanistan, and he told his story. And then we had Kelly Kowal, our friend from My Warrior's Place. She was actually up at Fort Bragg this week for a bunch of Memorial Day activities, and she carved out time to be part of my webinar. And she, of course, told Corey's story. And then 4th was Greg Page. Greg is a Gold Star father. Greg lost his son, Corporal Dagan Page, in that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. And you hear us say the name Dagan Page all the time because he's buried at Omaha National Cemetery. And so Greg told the story of Dagan. Kelly got to tell about My Warrior's Place. Greg got to tell about the Corporal Dagan Page Foundation. And it was just a fascinating discussion. And I cannot wait to get the recording and make it available for more people to view. But put a pinhole in that, because I'm going to talk more about Kelly and Greg when we get to the organization section, because they are collaborating on something and they've asked for my help. So stay tuned. All right. Oh, I forgot to tell you. So at the end of the webinar, I was pleased to announce to both of them that our Veterans Employee Resource Group at the company I work for, Worldwide Technology, we donated $1,000 to My Warrior's Place and $1,000 to the Corporal Dagan Page Foundation. How about that? And I know they will put it to good use. So more about this collaboration here in a minute, and it's an opportunity that we can all participate in. So stay tuned. Okay, well, let's see. Um, yeah, so Lori is saying, Lori, remind me when I get to the organization section, I'll talk more about what Kelly has done. I talked to Kelly on the phone today, and let me talk more about what Kelly's done over she's had a whirlwind 4 or 5 days. Okay, let's see. And then Saturday, I was up and out the door by 6 o'clock. To Georgia National Cemetery. It was such a beautiful morning. It was cool. It was windy, um, but not nearly as many people showed up this year. And I think they've a victim of their own success at Georgia National because they have, um, over the years, there has been an influx of people that morning, and there's only one way in and one way out. And people have made the way all the way to Canton, Georgia, only not to make it not to make it in time to the ceremony, and they've had to turn around and gone home. Same things happen on Reach Across America. Well, I think that's caused a lot of people not to even try, especially when the ceremony is at 9 in the morning. That means people really need to be getting there by 7. That means they need to be leaving their house at 6, like I did. Anyway, I don't know what they're going to do about it, but um, everybody that was there had a great time, of course, and there were still a lot of people, but nowhere near. Lori, I think even on the week that we did Operation Freedom Flag, I think we had more people there. That was the rogue effort that Lori spearheaded to place flags during COVID. But anyway, um, so we ended up placing flags on every headstone there at Georgia National Saturday morning. And I know some of others here did at your local cemetery as well. I know they had a ceremony in his little town of Fitzgerald, and I know Omaha and JB and others. But anyway, so that's what I did Saturday morning, very early. Now go back to last Monday night. This has nothing to do with Memorial Day, but it's something um, that I did. I forgot to talk about. Lori got us tickets for the Stevie Nicks concert in Atlanta. Lori couldn't go, but my daughter Hannah went with me. Absolutely fantastic. Stevie Nicks just turned 75 this past week, and you would not believe the show that she put on. It was fantastic. And then Wednesday night, Lori and I went to the Braves Dodgers game, and I'm just a baseball guy. I love being at the ballpark. And it was a fantastic game. The Braves ended up winning on a walk-off sac fly, but it was a good time. So we had a very busy week with evening activities and different things, which made it a little stressful working toward Thursday when I had to do the webinar. But everything worked out. Also, I just found this out about an hour and a half ago. I have three engineering students that are in my current cohort of my academy. And one of them lives in the DC area. And one of them lives in Florida, but she's kind of a nomad. And the other lives in St. Louis. Well, the nomad and the St. Louis student, they went to Washington, DC for the long weekend. Well, so these are young ladies in their mid-20s, early to mid-20s. They surprised the heck out of me. They went to Arlington today and attended the changing of the guard. Can you imagine that? And I don't know if I had anything to do with that. They know my background. They know what I do and talk about. They attended my seminar or my webinar this last week. But I was so surprised by that, them and that generation of going out of the way to do that. And it turns out the one young lady, Christina, her grandfather is buried there, and they visited him while they were there. Oh, Daryl, that's crazy, isn't it? Facebook. Yeah, crazy. Okay, well, let's see. And the hat of the week, hat of the week, hat of the week, hat of the week, you guys know, has always has something to do with what the heck this guy's jabbering about. And I've worn this hat many, many times as hat of the week, and it just seemed fitting. This is Zane's hat, and I love to wear this hat. I like the hat, but I love to wear it because it makes me feel close to him. And I wore it today, and you guys remember we do bad things to bad people. It's just a cool hat, and he wore it a lot, so I like to wear it. But that is the hat of the week. Okay, well, let's see. This I neglected to mention this last week, but I've included it this week in This Week in Military History. Um, on May the 25th of 2007, and I should have mentioned this last week, May the 25th, two men in Zane's unit before he got there, the tour before, were killed in action. Staff Sergeant Stephen Butcher, who is actually buried at Arlington, I believe, and Specialist Daniel Cagle. I think he's buried in California, but they were with 369 of the 3rd ID, and they were both killed on May the 25th, so last week, 2007. So we have a reason to remember them, not just for Memorial Day, but the anniversary of their passing. Okay, let's see. Let's move on to the Veteran Cemetery Challenge. We had some Veteran Cemetery visits this week. So Daryl, tell me, I know you visited today. Was that your second visit of the week? Let me know that. I know that my dad has been visiting Evergreen Cemetery, there where my mom is buried. And Dad says, well, that doesn't count because it's not a national cemetery. But you know what? It does count because there are veterans buried there. Uncle Bob is buried there. There's a veteran that rests right there next to my mom. Forget his name. I need to post a picture of that. But so Dad made several visits there. I'm going to count one. Jim Miller went to Omaha National. And now he's added a third person to visit there. He visited our colleague Todd Vanderwerken. He's visited Corporal Page, and he visited Roy Walton. Steve has got a list there of individuals that's in his thoughts today. Spec 5 Marvin Brushaker. Lieutenant Colonel Bill Golden. Come on the Looking Glass. Commander Phil Jacobs. Master Sergeant Mike Harris. Master Sergeant Mike Heiser, who we both served with. Roy Todd. Yep. And Steve says he went to Omaha National yesterday. Well, thank you for that, Steve. Steve, I'm going to add yours right here real quick and update my numbers. Bear with me. I get some of these on the fly. Yes, she does, Lori. Okay, thank you, Steve. All right, so Daryl times 2, Dad, Jimbo Miller to Omaha National, Guy to Georgia National, Amy to Omaha National, I mentioned, with Carry the Load. I don't know if Amy went over the weekend or not, but if I find out, we'll add that next week. Steve and Kathy to Omaha National, and then my Air Force buddy Diana Fender, she visited Camp Chapel United Methodist Church in Baltimore County, where her cousin rests. So thanks, Diana, for sending that in. Got you on the list there. So if I add up all the visits for the week, and then this isn't a science, so it's not always 100%, but I think we're at 8 visits for the week, 836 visits to 175 different locations. So Lori, you're going to have to get another 1,000 sign made up because we're about 160 away from 1,000 cemetery visits. How about that? So thank you guys for doing that along with us. All right, moving on to the Thank a Vet Challenge. Let me tell you what I think I know. Daryl had a nice encounter with an Air Force veteran this week. My Aunt Paula thanked a Vietnam vet at the Wally World. I had an interesting one this week. I had a couple others, but I can't remember the branch or where they were at. And I don't always take good notes, but I had one that I do remember. And it's an odd one because he's not an American military veteran. He's a Royal Dutch Army veteran, an artillery officer. This guy's name's Dave de Vries, and he lives in Amsterdam. He's a colleague of mine at work, and one of our vice presidents introduced us, and so we had a chance to talk earlier in the week, and he's agreed to be our Veterans Employee Resource Group liaison for Europe, Asia, Middle East, Africa. And anyway, so I'll be working with him more, but Dave seemed like a swell guy. And then my dad had several, a Marine / Army colonel, 2 other Army, an Air Force, a Navy, a Marine, and an Air Force vet named Max. How about that? So Dad, you had a good week there. And Carl, if you're in there, yeah, Carl's in there. Carl had the command chief master sergeant of a B-2 squadron there at, what's the Air Force base? Whiteman there, I guess, right, Carl? Whiteman, Noster, Missouri. So I'm curious what the occasion of the encounter was, but he met the command chief master sergeant of that B-2 squadron. So we got you there. And then Ken's coming in across the finish line with a couple of thank yous here. Let me move up to Ken. I need my glasses, Ken. Hang on. First was a retired SAC vet, Wordsmith. Okay, that's Michigan, maybe. And then an NCO who was a C-130 mechanic during Vietnam. Both had amazing stories. Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. All right, Ken, I'm going to put 2 for you and update my total. Okay, awesome. Thank you, Ken, for piping in there. All right, don't forget, if there's somebody you're honoring on Memorial Day, put it in the chat there before we get to the end here. All right, so if I add up all the thank yous this week, now I had some, when you go to these big events and stuff, it's hard to keep track of all these things, and you might not have said thank you, but you had a conversation with somebody. That's how it was for me at the Memorial Day event this week. Had several encounters there, but one thing that stood out to me though, and there's a new director at Georgia National Cemetery, and they've gone through a couple over the years. Well, there's a new one, and something struck me about her. She's not a veteran. She works for the VA, obviously, and she's the new director of the cemetery. But I thought her speech was appropriate. It was not too long. It was about the heroes. But the thing that stuck with me was after she spoke, after the guest speaker spoke, after we had a retired brigadier general, the lieutenant general he was. I'm shortchanging him. Anyway, she was right out there placing flags with everybody else. She was placing flags at the headstones with everybody else. To me, that said more than she could have ever said in her speech. So I hope to meet her sometime and see what she's all about. Anyway, So if I add up the thank yous, 14 for the week, we're at 2,131. 2,131 times somebody has heard from this relatively small group of patriots, thank you, or hey, what'd you do in the service? Or hey, I appreciate you. And that's not too shabby there. Okay, let's move on. Organization. So this is where I want to make it a little bit of an announcement here. So if I look at our organizations, we have Running to Honor coming up. So we are in the home stretch here. July, the last Saturday in July, we'll be sweating we'll be walking a 5K. It's no big deal for me. I walked a 5K today. I walked more than a 5K. I walk a 5K every day. I did 5 miles today. So but I'm looking forward to it, Aaron. And also, Aaron was the featured guest speaker at a Memorial Day ceremony there in, oh gosh, help me out, Aaron. Was it in Lincoln Park? Somewhere. He's in the Detroit metro there, and he's got so many little hamlets around there that he talks about, but I forget the names of them all. But anyway, he did a fantastic job. I think I shared it on the Speaking of Zane Facebook group, but great work that you do there, Aaron. Okay, let's see. Now let me get to, I already talked about Carry the Load. Amy went out. Let me get to My Warrior's Place and the Corporal Dagan Page Foundation. Well, so here's what happened. Kelly calls me today. Kelly calls me this morning on Memorial Day. I'm thinking, don't you have a speech to give or something? Well, it turns out she did. Kelly started out late last week at Fort Bragg. You've seen probably some of the fantastic photos of the boots. So there's a boot and a flag and a field full of it for all the soldiers we've lost. And she was a guest up there, and she goes there. I think she goes there every year now. But anyway, so she was up in North Carolina. Well, she was there on the Thursday when I asked her if she would be one of my guests, and she did. But then I think she got home, and then on Saturday, what Lori was talking about, she was a guest. She had gotten all the way home to Tampa, and she drove up to Tallahassee to the state capitol, and she was a guest of the governor. And she got to speak with Governor DeSantis, and she got to give him a copy of her book. And then she was telling me today that she drove 4 hours for a 2-hour gathering and drove 4 hours back. And she says it's Monday afternoon. I spoke this morning here in the Tampa area, and this afternoon I'm in my pajamas. So I said, well, you deserve it. But anyway, she called me and wanted to ask for some help. After the webinar that I hosted last week, she and Greg got together and had a conversation. They're both Gold Star parents. They both lost their sons in Afghanistan, and I guess they just felt the need to talk with one another. And Kelly invited Greg to come down to My Warrior's Place, and that's how the conversation started. And Kelly was telling me that they were talking about the families of the other 12 families. You remember there were 13 killed in that withdrawal. And so now, after they've talked, they're planning to collaborate because Kelly is going to be at My Warrior's Place at the new location in Punta Gorda. Kelly's going to be hosting a gathering to honor those 13. That died that day. It'll be the 2-year anniversary. So she's planning for this to occur at My Warrior's Place in Punta Gorda, Florida, on like August 26th. It's the last Saturday in August, I believe, but it marks the 2-year anniversary of the death of those 13. So Kelly invited Greg to come down there. Greg says, well, we've never all gotten together. And Kelly says, well, could we get the other 12 families here and honor um, honor that those 13 at my Warriors Place? So um, Kelly's worried that some of the families may not be able to afford to get there. Now she has it worked out that she will my Warriors Place will cover the cost of their hotel for Friday night and Saturday night, I think it is. Um, but she's worried about them not being able to get there. So she asked me if I could help put out the word and see if we can gather some funds to have available to the families of these 12 others that were killed in that withdrawal from Afghanistan. I said, well, let me see what I can do. So I've got a list of organizations, including my own work. She said, do you think your work would help? And I said, well, let me check. So I'm going to go, work on some things at work. I've got the company that Greg works for is a business partner of ours, and they like to do things together with us. And there's some other organizations, work-related organizations that might pitch in. And then I'm thinking, there may be some other outfits, organizations that if we can get the word out about what we're trying to accomplish, might want to pitch in, whether it's my friend Amanda's organization, speaking of Zane, running to honor. There's just a lot of organizations that might have an interest in helping make this possible. So anyway, stay tuned for more information about it. Kelly is now working up sort of an official narrative about what she's hoping to accomplish, and then we can start to share that with people that we know, and maybe word of mouth and this, that, and the other. We can be sure that getting to Florida won't be an obstacle for these families to honor those 13. No one else is going to honor them. No one else has. Kelly's gonna. And Kelly said, Guy, when the 2-year mark came for me, the 2-year mark of losing Corey, she says, a lot of the initial fervor and stuff kind of dissipated. And she says, that was a point in time where I kind of felt like I was on my own. And, she said that 2-year mark was kind of a defining moment. And she says, that's the point where these families are at. And anyway, so I know Kelly's heart is big and Kelly thinks big. So anyway, stay tuned for more about that. And as I gather more information about it, I'll share it with you guys, and you can share it with somebody, and they can share it with somebody. And then we'll, I'm planning to be there. Lori and I will be there come hell or high water in, I guess, late August to honor the 13 families. So stay tuned for more. There'll be plenty of more talk about that, and I'll be posting on the Facebook page. I'm sure you'll see it on My Warriors Place. I'll point you guys to the Dagan Page Foundation. I'm sure that there'll be some information on there. I don't know that I've shared that link with you guys, but I'll certainly do it in the Speaking of Zane Facebook group. I'll share the Corporal Dagan Page Foundation link. But yeah, it's exciting, and Kelly is not afraid to think big, and Kelly is not afraid to make something happen when it looks like it can't happen. My Warriors Place did not look possible, but she made it happen nonetheless. So anyway, stay tuned for that. Okay, well, I have talked way too much tonight for Memorial Day. I hope you guys have had a fantastic, reflective weekend. I see a lot of things these days about people. There's the thing about, don't thank us on Memorial Day. Armed Forces Day is for the active duty. Memorial Day is for the fallen. Veterans Day that's all true. That's all true. I don't get all butthurt about it, and I don't try to make anybody feel bad about it. People don't know. Like at work, there's a whole generation of people at work that don't know, and how do you blame them? They didn't learn it from their parents, and they didn't learn it in school. And I look at it as an opportunity. And that's why I was so excited about these young people attending my webinar, because they got to hear not just the origins of Memorial Day, but they got to hear from some families who have paid the ultimate price But I don't get all butthurt about it. I don't get upset, and I'm not looking for somebody to slip up and say Happy Memorial Day so I can chastise them. That's ridiculous. I don't, I just don't. I look at it as an opportunity to educate and share but anyway, so that's just me up on my soapbox there. But hey, I'd rather hear Happy Memorial Day from somebody than nothing from somebody. Anyway, and it gives you an opportunity to have a conversation. Well, hey, anyway, I just don't get all wound up in it. But I forget where I was going with that, but it doesn't matter. Okay, well, Happy Memorial Day from this guy. Um, I relaxed this weekend. I celebrated. We barbecued. I did a pork butt. The kids went to the pool. All of that stuff is appropriate. Hot dogs and hamburgers and a cold Yingling. All of that's appropriate. Um, to celebrate. I tell you, we stop and we honor and we recognize that those that have passed. But you know what? We can celebrate that such men and women existed, and that's kind of the way I look at it: is celebrate that such men and women who were willing to give their lives existed, and we can pause and honor them at the same time. But have a great week, everybody. I'm getting all preachy here on everybody, but look forward to seeing you guys next week. Maybe I'll have a little more about the collaboration between My Warriors Place and the Dagan Page Foundation, and if I can be some kind of a broker in that, I'm happy to. But we'll look forward to seeing you all next Sunday night for the 233rd edition of Speaking of Zane. Be good, everybody. Take care. Have a fantastic short week, 4-day work week. Talk to you later.